Hi, we are going to pick up where we left off on the last video. If you remember, we didn't change this last method that was given as a sample. I am going to change it this time and show you how you could work with some integers in a program. I am not going to use the returning value right now. We will show you a little bit later how to deal with that. So I'm going to delete out my comments. And the comment that I'm going to do here is we're just going to demonstrate adding two numbers. And so I'm going to do a couple of things. Public on the method name is there because we want to be able to access the method outside the class, so we make it public. I'm not going to return anything. I'm going to call my method do some math because I'm just going to do some math. Just going to add two numbers. And then I'm going to create a local variable, sum, and it's going to be assigned x plus y. This line of code here does two things. It declares and assigns. So it declares an integer and it assigns a value to sum. So it's a declaration and an assignment statement. But now I have the problem that I want to get that value to my screen, so I'm going to call new message and I'm going to send the message to the screen. The sum is, add to it the variable sum. And if I compile this and we run the code, please notice that it does take a parameter. It will expect me to input a value. I'm getting an error message, so if we go back, it says that there's an unclosed string literal, which means this double quote mark at the end here shouldn't be there. That was, I opened a string literal by doing that. Anything that's in quotes is a string literal. So any message that you put in quotes is a string literal. We'll try this again. Create a new chalkboard, run our code, and see if we can get the do some math to work. So I'm going to send in the number 5, so it should add 0 plus 5, hit OK. Because I automatically had it call the message, it's printing out the sum is 5. So we have just successfully did a sum of two numbers here. I am going to show you one other problem that you might have when you're outputting integers or numbers in Java. Let's say I just did new message and I sent it sum. If I tried that, it's going to give me an error message. It says incompatible types because an integer cannot be converted to a string. And what it's doing is there's a data collision. So sum is my argument that's going into this parameter up here. I am sending sum to new message, but that's supposed to be a string. So the compiler is telling us that there's a problem. I can't take an integer and send it into a string. So I could try to trick the compiler and say, well, I'm going to make sum a string. So I'm going to make my output that I want to send assign it sum. So now sum's going to be assigned to a string, and I'm just going to send it the new output. Compile, and again, it recognizes sum is an integer. You cannot automatically print it to a string. So you have to manually tell this to change the integer to a string. And you do that with a special command that's called integer to string. So now the computer is going to take sum, it's going to change it to a string and assign it to output. Output is now a string, so it can get sent into the message, and we will see if this works. So if I call do some math, send in a new value 7, hit OK. This doesn't print my the sum is 7 because it's only printing that one value, but it did it. So that was occurring because of what I would call kind of a data collision. It's called a dataintype incompatibility is what it is. And it's a fluke. It's not a fluke. It's on purpose. It was designed that way. But what happens if you're just trying to output or print a number and you don't add it onto a string, the compiler doesn't know what to do. If you start a message with a string and then you add on a number, it knows behind the scenes that, oh, it's expecting a string. So I'm just going to, this is all going to be one string. But if you send it just a number, it gets confused. And so that's just a little FYI if you ever get that message that, well, that's what's going on. There's other ways that you can do some converting. For example, you might have to convert not just integers, but that would be something to deal with later. So this tutorial should have showed you how to do a little bit of math along with our chalkboard example. And our next example is going to show you another way that you could basically do the same thing we just did here, but without using all of the built-in methods and the constructors like we have here. So tune in next time to using for a main method in order to run our programs.